our DNA is financial planning. We also do investment management. One of the reasons that Kent was here was about 3 years ago, we decided to build an elder services team, elder law, senior real estate, the various communities that seniors could live in, simply because our clients are aging and they were asking for these services. And it's like you said, Jim, we're not caregivers, so we just sort of built a center of influence around elder services.
Chris? You're muted.
There we go. Try again. I'm Chris Ramsey. I'm a Story Point Senior Living, and we are independent senior living with 42 apartment homes that are equivalent to assisted living in the state of Kentucky, and we are located there in Middletown behind Panera.
Let's see, Nancy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nancy Grease with Presley Realty. I, like Kent, our guest speaker today, am a licensed real estate agent, broker, and I also have my SRES designation, which is Seniors Real Estate Specialist. Kent will go way into detail, and Kent, I've heard his speeches, I mean, his presentations before, and they're wonderful. But as a Seniors Real Estate Specialist, we have special training and kind of a calling to help people that are the older population, maybe that need more hand-holding, more information, haven't sold a house in a long time, work with estates, that type of thing, help them manage that transition from conception to past closing. So we help put all those wheels in motion to make that process happen for them. But Kent will go into detail.
Allison, can you talk and drive?
I can, yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Garrett. I am with the Springs at Stony Brook. We are a Trilogy Health Services senior living community, and we're a full continuum of care community. So we have independent living, personal care memory care, skilled nursing, and skilled memory care. So we are located in J-Town, and we have 9 total locations in the city of Louisville.
Okay, I'm Jim Wright. I'm a CPA and with Rye, Wright and Hegel, and a financial planner with Money Concepts. And Greg, very similar to what you're doing, I'm doing this with the chamber, starting the Synergy Group and for referral services. So this is very similar to what you're doing. And you and I should touch base and compare notes on this later. Sure. I prepare tax returns. I've been doing this for 45 years. I'm a CPA and I'm a licensed stockbroker, insurance agent, and advisor. I do this fiduciary responsibility that the Congress has put upon us and the SEC is old hat for me. I started out as a CPA in the old school, and everything we did, we had a fiduciary responsibility to our clients and to their best interest, even though people would hire us to audit their tax returns or audit their financial statements, and we would give them an opinion, but we also gave them advice to help them clean up their books and get everything straight. I ran into a lot of people that weren't saving for retirement, so I joined Money Concepts, which allows me to practice as a CPA and still give financial advice. And I partnered with some young guys that do most of the financial planning, backroom work for me. So I have plenty of time to meet with my clients, and being in this practice for a long time, I have staff people that do a lot of the tax returns, but I still meet with my people and I still check everything. So welcome to our group. Greg, are you going to introduce Ken?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I actually met Kent about 2 or 3 years ago from Sherry Polar, who actually specializes in elder law. We had a couple of clients that had some immediate issues, and then during that period of time, she said, "You need to meet Kent Lee." So we've been working together, during that period of time. In fact, my brother attempted to sell my mother's condo before we transitioned her into the Masonic home. And I said, "Well, I have somebody, so well, let me try." And anyway, so Ken ended up selling it for us. So he has helped some of our other clients, and I know it's we have some others that do the same thing. So Ken, I'm gonna let you go ahead and do the overview. And it's good to see that we actually are starting to see some real estate agents that specialize in senior care. I'm a baby boomer, and we're certainly not getting any younger. So with that, Kent.
Hey, thank you very much, Greg. I know everybody on this call. I'm meeting Jim for the first time, and I'm meeting Laura for the first time. So for the rest of you that have put up with me on previous presentations and information, this may be a little bit of duplication, but there also may be some data in here that I think will support what this entire group's all about, and that is helping our seniors and their families who are transitioning to senior living and they have a home to sell. I put that at the end because that really pertains to myself and Nancy on the call, but also, as we all know, whether you're Greg sitting in your chair or Jim or Allison, lots of times the home is the biggest asset that our seniors may have. And it becomes very important and critical how we take care of that asset, not only in the marketing selling process, but some of the logistics about how we do it as senior real estate specialists as it relates to the importance of their long-term care needs. So Laura, do you want to utilize the slides for this group now that you know that I know most of the folks, or do you want me to kind of talk from just my own experience? I'll leave it up to you and the group.
Well, I'm going to say I'm going to leave that one up to you. If I can, we can always share screens. So your presentation, if you bring it up on your computer, then I can hit share screen and everyone will see it. Or I can just send it out to the participants that are on this call.
Okay, hang on. Let me just bring it up. Okay, can you see that?
Let's see.
Or did I just blink myself out?
Well, it says that we're sharing.
I can see all your icons.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing your desktop. So I think since you're running the meeting, Laura, I think,
Hold on. I'm just trying to get all of y'all back. I can't get my Zoom to come back up.
Well, it's still there. It's still on my screen. It's off to the side.
Yeah, mine's off to the side too, but how do I get, anybody have any idea how I can get all of y'all back on my screen? Your screen, oh, here we go.
I think if you stop sharing, that will do it.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Mhm.
You're right.
Unfortunately, I've been on a gazillion of these.
Okay, let me go do a couple things, Kent, and I'll be back. So give me just a second.
Yeah, we should have a class on how to do Zoom. I've done a lot of them, but I'm still just fumbling with it.
Yeah, I learned it on the fly too. What we
Yeah,
should
I
have done is
think
we should have all bought Zoom stock in January is what we should have done, Jim.
well, let me,
If
Well,
we had known how bad it was, we would have.
yeah, no kidding. Missed opportunity. Let me
Misinformation.
just start with some conversation points as Laura's working the slides. It's not so much the slides as much as some of the messaging, and I'd like to solicit participation. So Nancy, Allison, Chris, like I said, we're all taking care of the senior at this point with different services. Let me just give you a little bit of background about me, how I ended up here on this call. And then I'd like to get into a little bit about what makes the senior real estate specialist different than maybe a realtor that you might know in your social life. I've been a realtor since 2013. In 2016, I had a personal experience of transitioning my mother and my stepdad, who lived in Indianapolis while I'm here in Louisville, from their home to a senior living community. That was a very ugly experience for me at the time because I didn't know anything about senior living, levels of care, any kind of services, about how do you go about finding the right senior living community based upon what their needs are, both financially as well as their care needs. So that was my aha moment that said, hey, I'm going to dedicate my entire real estate services to seniors and their families who are transitioning to senior living and they have a home to sell. So since 2016, this is all I do. This is just my choice. I love what I do because of who I work with and work for. The big difference between, and I'll separate what we do as senior real estate specialists. There you go. Very good. Super duper. Can everybody see that?
Yes,
Okay. Do I have control, or Laura, you may be the one to have control. So why don't we go to slide 3. So here are some things that I really believe that make Nancy and myself, and when I started this 5 years ago, and Allison will probably attest to this, Chris will attest to this, they really didn't hear about a senior real estate specialist. But since 5 years ago to today, I would say here in Louisville, from maybe a couple of us to now there's, 5 to 10 folks that are professional realtors who have the designation as an SRES, because I think this is really, really important. I think it's really good for seniors to have specialists that understand what their needs are, because as I always say, seniors have different needs and they require different services. And we'll get into kind of the mindset of the senior and of course the adult children and the families. Number one is they're overwhelmed by this idea of, I have to sell the family home, I have to transition to senior living. Maybe they're in rehab, they've had a fall, they can't go back home. Maybe they're a widow or a widower, and maybe the kids, like my personal experience, the kids live out of city, out of state. Who's going to help me? What do I do with all my stuff? So all of a sudden, this whole process about how we transition seniors and how we deal with their assets, typically their home and their personal property, it can be very, very overwhelming. So it starts to highlight the difference. If I would come to you, Greg, or you, Jim, and say, hey, you're looking to sell your home, that transition is going to look a little bit different than my client who's 85 years old and has nobody to help her. What do we do? If you go to the next slide, life experiences, this is a very simple slide that basically says, and I think Nancy would probably attest to this, realtors, non-SRES type clients, their client base is typically going to be under 55. 100% of my clients are over 55. So you start to see the difference between the non-senior and the senior, and what kind of starts to look different about the client itself. I'll give you a couple examples. Number one, when we're looking at income, seniors, as you typically know, are, Jim, fixed income, where younger people, hey, this is the time they're growing their income base. When you're looking for, and my mother says this all the time, the priorities of seniors is they don't want to run out of money. I'm sure Jim, you and Greg both have heard this all the time. I don't want to run out of money. My mother tells me this every time I talk to her, even though I keep telling her, you're going to be okay. Where the younger generation, I don't think they're thinking about that. So from a life expectancy standpoint, the senior versus non-senior starts to really be different. If you get into the idea of the next slide of the senior home versus the non-senior home, here's some of the big differences. And I'm sorry that the slides are a little whacked. Obviously, in these presentations, they have a tendency to move a little bit on me. Seniors typically have been in their home for 25 plus years. Nancy would probably attest that most younger generations live in their home less than 5 years before they sell and buy something else, or they upsize, or they get corporate relocation. One of the most important factors is that seniors typically own their home outright. There is no mortgage. But there's also some hidden things that as senior real estate specialists that we really need to be aware of. PVA valuation as an example. Obviously, seniors have lots of stuff after being in their home 30 years. How do we deal with that? When I got into being a senior real estate specialist, as Greg mentioned earlier, elder law attorneys. I didn't know what an elder law attorney was. I thought they were old attorneys. That's a joke, by the way. Elder law attorney is an important, critical new team member to the senior and their families, just like what you do, Jim, what you do, Greg. They're very, very important about estate planning processes to make sure that they're buttoned up. Well, I can tell you that my personal experience, I thought my mother was buttoned up. She wasn't buttoned up at all. When I brought her from Indianapolis to Kentucky, to Louisville 3 years ago, we actually went back to a different elder law attorney here locally, because when I brought her across the river, she's 94, she has MS, she's going to be in skilled care someday. Well, if that's the case, then Medicaid is going to be part of her health care plan. So we went back to elder law here locally because Medicaid governed in Kentucky is different than it's governed in Indiana, as you all know. So there's a lot of things to really think about when you have a senior and you're going to sell their home that's very different than a 40-year-old couple with 2 children. Next slide. So the question is, what makes my listings, now you have a little bit of feel about our client base, what Nancy and I serve as senior real estate specialists, what's different about the marketing and selling of the home? This is my data from 2019, and 2020 is tracking very, very close to this. 93% of the homes I sold last year were empty vacant. These aren't HGTV type situations. They're not beautifully staged, and they're not this. Nancy's smiling because she knows. Why is the home empty vacant? We always want our senior who is transitioning to senior living to transition first. We do not want to try to stage, market, and sell the home while they're living in it. It is way too stressful. And quite honestly, in today's environment, it's not safe and it's not healthy. So we always want the senior to transition first. Secondly, the majority of the time, in fact, I'm negotiating 2 different listings right now, contracts that this applies, we're going to sell the home as is. In other words, the seller's not going to make any repairs. The other thing that really stresses seniors out, because they typically haven't sold a home in 30 plus years, is all of the little requests that come in. So we market the home very differently, empty vacant. We're going to sell it as is. Seller won't make any repairs. And all my business is listings because seniors are not buyers. Most realtor or most realtors, the majority of their base of business comes from buyers. My business is pretty much 100% listings. Why? Because again, seniors don't buy. So all of a sudden you start to see that the marketing of the home represents not only the senior, but it also markets it very differently. So the question is, okay, Kent, does your model work? The next two slides just kind of gives you the cumulative days on market for myself from 2019. This is data out of GLAR, my brokerage, Homepage Realty, and GLAR represents all realtors. So if you look at my cumulative days on market compared to my brokerage and all other realtors, I'm bringing those homes under contract to closing, which is the defined as cumulative days on market, under 30 days. This year, the next slide, it's 21 days for January through May. I'll certainly update the slide once we get to year end here. But just to give you an idea, during COVID, when people think houses are sitting longer, Nancy knows this as well, houses aren't sitting longer, they're selling faster. Here's the next slide, really also further separates what Nancy and I do, or any senior real estate specialist who is involved in this. The majority of the time, I'm working with the legal representative, not the actual homeowner / seller. Legal representatives could be durable power of attorneys, trustees, executrix. So this also is very different than when you're working with younger people. You're typically working with the homeowner themselves. In my experience, the majority of the time I'm working with legal representatives. Next slide. So what I've learned over the last 5 years is it takes a village to take care of the senior. Why? Think about this. We've got a senior living in a home that they've been in for 40 years. How do we get them from where they are to Allison's community or Chris's community? And what kind of services do we need to put around that senior and their family? It could be anywhere from the senior living community, concierge placement services, elder law attorneys, senior movers to help organize, pack, get them moved, so we can go back and get the house ready for market as it is empty, vacant. So it really takes a lot of resources to put around the senior that's different than the younger generation. Next slide. So one of the two biggest areas consistently that comes up in my service line is how do we help the senior with their stuff and getting them moved? And then the second one is elder law attorney consultation. So senior movers are people that will help coordinate all of the personal property and not only getting them organized, packed, and moved and set up in their new beautiful home at the senior living communities here in town, but then what do you do with all the remaining stuff they don't want? So the senior mover is a critically important extension of my service to help get the senior transition first so we can then go back and address the house. The next slide kind of shows the simple buckets, as I call it, about how do you deal with the personal property. We all have lots of stuff. My mom still tries to pawn stuff off on me. I don't want it, Mom. I'm sorry. You know, Greg has gone through this with his mother's transition as well. So we organize the personal property into 4 buckets. Number one, and most importantly, and this is where we really stress to the senior and the family, that's the bucket we want you to focus on. It's interesting, they always want to start with, well, I got to start throwing things away. No, don't do that. Just focus on what do you want to keep. What do you want the family to have? What do you want the grandkids to have? What do you want to take with you to your senior living community? So focus on that bucket. That's the most important because we don't want to touch that bucket. But what's left, then the senior mover, through all of their connections, help sell what's remaining. What is not sellable, we donate to local charity, and what's left, we dispose. One point about the sell, we do not do estate sales. Estate sales, in the opinion of the senior movers, are not safe. We don't like having a lot of people trampling through the home. So we do online auction selling. When say we, not me, but the senior mover does online auction selling to help create some income for the senior with the stuff that is sellable. What is not sellable, we donate to local charities or the charities of the senior or the family, and then ultimately we dispose. So once the personal property is all dealt with and the house gets emptied, that's where I start my service line of getting the house ready for market and then on the market. Next slide. The other big area that is so critically important for seniors is the elder law consultation. This slide shows that of all of my clients over the last 2 years, and it's even tracking to this year through almost 10 months, the elder law consultation of all my clients over the last 2 years, 74% have gotten to an elder law attorney one way or the other. Now, how does that break down? Well, sometimes that consultation occurs because I refer. Sometimes the elder law attorney calls me and says, hey, Ken, I have a client who needs to sell their house. Sometimes it's a mutual client. And then sometimes, as much as I stress, we really encourage you to at least go and talk to an elder law attorney, about 26% just don't go. So that's okay, but we really try to encourage everyone to get to a consultation if they haven't had one. So that's just kind of a breakdown of my data and how the senior client and their families get to a consultation. Next couple slides. So the path from the time I meet a client till we get them to the closing table, there are so many different things along the way that Nancy and myself as senior real estate specialists really help them. I just closed a home yesterday, sent the Allison and the Chris's of the world, the sales and marketing folks at this senior living community. I also sent them what the net equity was. That can also be supplied to financial planners, because lots of times our seniors really don't know what their house is worth. But most importantly, what's their check going to look like at closing? So this really helps all parties involved, not only the senior living communities from the qualification standpoint as they're going through, hey, can mom afford to live here? But also when we're looking at financial planning as well as elder law planning, estate planning, when it comes to their, most likely their biggest asset, and that is the home. So the path is no different than any other client, but there's a lot of things along the way that are very different from the time you meet them until you get them to the closing table. That's about all I have to say. Any questions? Nancy, feel free to jump in, and with your experience, Allison and Chris, what you see on the senior living community side, because as you all know, I don't get all the business. There's plenty to share. And I hope in 5 years from now, that there are going to be a lot more dedicated senior real estate specialists in this field of helping our seniors. And oh, by the way, for one little simple data point, for most of the people on the call, of all the realtors in Greater Louisville Association of Realtors, 1% have the SRES designation. 1%. So that means about 50 of us that are active out of the 5,000 have the designation, but only a few of us, Nancy, myself, a couple others, truly are the only ones that are consistently seen in the senior world, in Allison's campus, in Chris's campus, at an organization called HSPN. And so I really, really hope over time that more and more realtors get into the senior market, because helping our seniors and their families through this process is really important. And I love what I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. And that was one point that I did make a note when you were speaking, that there are, a number of realtors, just like in any profession, you have, designations, you can get other certifications, that type of thing. And although I was one of the first ones here in Louisville, Kent, you started, early on, but I've had my SRES designation for many years.
Mhm.
And the reason I got it was because it was kind of an untapped market. And there have been quite a few others that have gotten the designation, but like Kent said, I could name maybe 10 that in this Louisville market that I would know that they're an SRES. And some people, I think, have the designation, but they don't practice it. So if you don't practice it, it's like anything, you go through the training, you got the certificate, and then it's just, something behind your name tag, if they even use it. So if you are suggesting someone to use an SRES, do your due diligence and ask them, what is that? What do you do? What percentage of your clients are, 55 and older? So just like anyone else would interview, we interview for clients all the time, but just kind of keep that in mind. And the other thing that I think is very important that Kent mentioned is that in this, and we all know, because we're all in this senior industry, that the mindset and the way that you approach situations with your seniors, especially when it comes to money and moving, are very, very, very sensitive subjects. And they take a lot more time to process. There's generally more people that are involved. They need to, digest and break these things down in their heads. And that's where Kent and I do come in ahead of time and say, okay, you may not be ready today, but you're thinking about it. So let's do that prep work to get you ready. And it may seem like anti, against what our goal is, but Kent and I, we're not, we want to make some money. We want to sell houses, but we want to do the right thing. And to get there, you have to go through the motions. You have to go through the process. You have to help that senior who he said many times have not sold a house in many, many years. And it is a process. And you have to take into consideration the emotional factor that maybe they don't want to move. This is not a happy thing for them. You got a first-time home buyer. Oh, they're all, let's do this tomorrow. You have somebody that's 55. They're like, whoa, 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 or they're 80. When I'm old, I'll think about it. Okay. Or after I break my hip and can't go home, then I'll just let the kids deal with it. But even if that's their mindset now, we have the tools to say, okay, that's fine. You don't want to leave until they cart you out on a stretcher. That's fine. Or you have something happen and you can't come home, but do you have your ducks in a row? If you're laid up and you can't tour, or COVID, you can't tour a senior's facility, let's do that now so that when that day comes, you already have been there. You already know what your options are. So you can tell your loved ones, this is my first choice. This is my second choice. And then also, do you want to leave all this to your kids? Start deciding on things, break it down, give a game plan, whether it's a 2-year plan or plan A, plan B, plan C. So just because you have a client that may not be ready today, it's still advisable that they speak with your financial planners, your wealth planners, you know, tour your facilities, your senior communities, independent communities, if you don't want to use the word senior, and you know, talk with an SRES and say, hey, you know, what do I do now to be prepared for then? And it also it keeps from them being overwhelmed because there's just too many things, and then many times they'll just block it and say, I'm just not going to do any of it. So it's a process. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have somebody that may not be ready, but hey, talk to us. I don't think you charge for a consultation. I know I don't. Just to sit down with somebody and say, hey, here's some things to consider. You know, we'll keep in touch on your progress, or here's a mover. Here's a, you know, like Kay, you know, someone to help you talk about just starting a process of downsizing, or do this, talk with your law attorney. So just kind of keep that in mind, because we're all here as a service, and building a rapport and a reputation, not a money grab, or by, you know, the last thing we want is to try to make someone feel like they have to leave their house. That's not our goal. Our goal is to, when that time comes, we want to help make it a smoother and a more pleasurable process, and make it a happy thing, as opposed to, I had to leave my house. So that's my soapbox.
I'd like to ask a question, if I could, of Chris and Allison, who are on the call, as representing senior living. This year has been a big challenge for all of us that deal with senior living. I mean, I can no longer walk in and say, hey, Chris, let's go to lunch. You know, they're off limits now. So if I could,
I can still go to lunch.
yeah, I understand. And this is not about selling a home. My question is, help us on the call understand what has changed for you with your interactions, with what you're hearing from seniors and their families because of COVID. And are they just holding off? What's been your experience this year? Because I can tell you my personal experience regarding my mother. She's in a CCRC here in Louisville. And I can guarantee you, there is no other place I'd want my mother than in a senior living community during this whole pandemic situation. So I'm a big proponent of senior living, but I'd like to hear what you ladies are hearing from seniors and their families as you converse with them about some of the challenges that you're having.
I'm going to jump in real quick if I can, because I need to jump on another Zoom in about 2 minutes. And we are actually seeing a lot of activity right now, a lot more interest we're getting daily, because I think folks have realized, okay, mom can't keep doing this. We are seeing that the biggest issue, and this is documented in articles and newsworthy events everywhere, it's the isolation. The isolation is killing our seniors, so it's being home alone. So at least when they come to these senior living communities or independent livings or what have you, they've got that group of people, even if it's just the caregivers alone, that they're able to communicate with and have community with and what have you. So we're seeing a lot of increased activity. So just real quick, Kent, you are so correct about the house thing. We have a really great client, potential prospect, whatever, resident, won't leave the home. He's already deposited, but will not leave the home to show the home. And so therefore, of course, it hasn't sold. Great neighborhood, the whole thing, but it's like, we got to get him out of that house so that they can sell the house, because he refuses to leave it even during open houses. So anywho's, so totally agree with that. Second thing, tell your mother you'll take whatever she wants, because selfishly, just go ahead and pass it on to me, because you know what my other interest is. And also, I want to know what online auction you're using, again, for selfish reasons. So there you go.
Call me later.
Okay, you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Allison, jump in.
So my experience is a little different than Chris's, because she's a standalone independent living with that enhanced living. So their regulations are very drastically different than the CCRC concept. So at my campus, we have skilled nursing. So we're all under one roof. So we have to follow skilled nursing guidelines, and consequently, we are not able to have visitation right now. We have been unable to have visitation since August, and we were planning to open for visitors on Monday. But because Jefferson County has now hit over 10% positivity rate, we have to cancel visitation again. So my biggest hurdle right now is visitation. Families don't want to move their loved ones in if they don't know when they will see them again. We can do window visits, we can do FaceTime, we can do Zoom calls, but that's not the same as seeing them in person. So consequently, I'm seeing a lot of my leads go to the standalone personal cares or the standalone independent livings because of visitation. Now, most of you all know me. I am a big advocate for continuing care retirement communities. I am a big advocate for the continuum of care. It is very important, but right now it is a detriment to my sales process because we have to follow those higher regulations. So most people that I'm speaking with are choosing to go where they can visit unless they have that skilled nursing need. Because we've been able to stay mostly COVID free, that's a positive, but just as a whole, it's a struggle right now because of that component. So, and I'm also just hearing a lot of people wanting to stay at home more because they can get the care they need. But then to Chris's point is, they're lacking the socialization. And so it's kind of, pick your poison, right? Do you want to be isolated and at least have control over who's coming and going in your home? Or do you want to move to a senior living community where you won't be as isolated from friends and coworkers, but you may be more isolated from your family, but at least you're getting the care you need. So, it's a challenging market right now from our end, from a continuing care end, because of all those regulations.
Yeah.
Allison, I agree. I think that much of what you're seeing, the conflict between do you stay at home and just have in-home care if, for what you can afford or get, or move in to, a community. I think what it boils down to is personality.
Right.
Okay, so my mother, your mother's totally different than mine. My mother just turned 90. She still lives at home, and she's not a social type person. She likes immediate family and she likes one-on-one, but she doesn't like the social aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is because of her her 90-year-old issues, hearing and sight and mobility. She doesn't want to be embarrassed. She doesn't want to go live with a bunch of old people. She doesn't want to take her walker. And so she chooses to stay at home and stay isolated. So that's a hurdle for us emotionally and to meet her needs. But COVID has used that as her defense now about, I'm so glad I didn't move when you all tried to get me to, because then you wouldn't be able to see me. So I think what Allison is seeing and what Kim was talking about, it boils down to the personality and the pick your poison. What is it that you really want? If you can't stand to be isolated, see, that'd be me. I would be just like, I'd rather be stuck in your building, at least hear people walking around or see them and have some interaction than being stuck in a house and waiting for somebody to come and do something for me. But some people just prefer to stay at home.
Right.
And so, it's all going to eventually happen. Time happens and people's medical or physical or emotional situations change. So, but yeah, I can see there's a distinct difference between your two facilities.
Right.
Jim, Greg, and Laura, you've been very patiently quiet. The floor is yours.
I'm not usually quiet, but this was your all show today. I was just here.
Well, actually, I have to say I'm sitting here thinking because I have a brother-in-law who's 87 years old. My sister just recently passed away, and we're kind of having the same discussions with him about selling his condominium. He's in Lexington and moving up here to Louisville because basically You know, we're the closest thing he has to family. And, you know, I've been going down there and starting to pack things up and bring things back up here, because if something happens to him, I'm the executor and I'm going to be taking care of all of it anyway. So I'm just trying to get kind of a head start on some things, but I'm trying to move him in the direction of, you know, what are we waiting for? You know, none of us are getting any younger. So if we're going to do this, and he is very lonely right now. And a lot of that's due to COVID. And I keep thinking that facilities like Story Point or something like that, because he's physically, he's in great shape to be 87 years old, just has a little bit of arthritis and that's about it. But he would probably thrive in an environment like Chris's, where they have a lot of socialization, and he would not be quite so lonely. And so my issue, I'm sitting here listening to all this and I'm going, yeah. But how do I maneuver him in the right direction to let's get going, you know? And I think a lot of it's just, he wants to do it up here. I think he wants to do it, but he just doesn't want to go through all the rigmarole that goes with it. I don't know.
I think on my opening slide, what your brother or brother-in-law, I'm sorry.
Brother-in-law. Mhm.
Brother-in-law may be going through is he's overwhelmed. He doesn't know how to get started. He doesn't understand the process. And quite honestly, he's not aware of the services that can make this transition to Louisville with you, to Story Point, wherever he wants to go. What's that look like? And I think having a simple sit down and as I said, put the resources around them to say, this is how we do this. Here are the services that we have available to do this. I think that gets them over the hurdle, because Nancy and I both have seen this. Allison has seen this. Chris has seen this. Getting them to move. I mean, there's some clients, I just closed on a client 2 weeks ago that I'd been working with for 1.5 years. And the reason is it took him a year, took my mother 6 months to finally decide, okay, we're going to do this. What that was just, they just didn't understand. And so if there's anything I could encourage you is to, in Lexington, we know SRESs, we know senior movers. Maybe it might be just good information to say, this is how this happens. And I think
and that's great advice. And Ken, I've actually done that, being a part of this group and having 65 different members in this group. Every aspect of getting him moved up here can be taken care of. And I've had that discussion with him. I've even had a couple people that have volunteered to drive down there with me to talk to him. One is Colleen with Resize Your Nest, just to go down and kind of reassure him of the process. I just can't get him over that. I can't get him over that hurdle. So
you have to understand that not only is he moving cities, even though he's not that far away, it's not like he's staying where everything is going to be different, and he's still grieving. I mean,
I know that, Nancy. That's why
I think that's probably the biggest part. I think he feels like he's just, everything is gone if he moves, and that's something he just has to process. But
I know
information a little bit at a time is what just kind of like Kent and I have to do. We just kind of have to just little by little just help the process go through its course.
And you're absolutely right. You're
sending him things and he's thinking it. He's just processing and trying to get his heart to be there. But yeah, so just don't give up and don't push, just offer and little, those little things. Hey, my mother, like I said, she's 90 years old. Anytime I call her or go over there, the first thing she says is, don't even start, because But she still has on her refrigerator, little postcards she gets from other real estate agents talking about the house that just sold down the street and how much they got for it, you know. I'm like, Mom, you know, I can give you that information. It's like, no, I don't want to hear it from you. I want to, you know, she wants to be independent. And the last thing people want is somebody to tell them what to do. So
And
it's like,
I
hey,
agree
Mom,
with
let's
that.
go have lunch. And when the day comes, we'll
Yeah.
deal with it, you know.
Well, and you know, the thing is, he used to live in Louisville. So he wants to come back up here.
Okay, well, that helps.
You know, but like I said, I'm just treading lightly, and I'll let him bring it up most of the time. Once in a blue moon, I do bring it up when I'm down there packing stuff up, you know.
Yeah,
So
Laura?
go ahead.
Laura,
Mhm.
did you use hospice with your sister?
Yes.
Okay, they have excellent counseling resources.
right.
We went through the
Okay.
grief counseling when my father passed away,
Mhm.
and I took my mother. I went just to take my mother, and then my wife went with me, and we all three benefited from it. It's an independent third party sitting there listening to you and sitting around in a group with other people that are grieving the same way, and you get to verbalize what you're feeling inside that you can't say to anybody else, especially the family.
Right.
And I would highly recommend that you
Okay. Thank
pursue
you.
that first with hospice.
And
And
I
then
have,
I wanted to say to Ken, Ken, in our group, today you saw two of the assisted living or senior living care homes represented, but we have a full range of people that provide home care, home staging, home reduction. We have people that move. We have people that'll come out and tell you what to take and what not to take. We have people that will auction it online that are members of our group. We have movers that will help get rid of the junk. We have charities that will take the stuff. We have home caregivers that will assist people. And I have found my experience, because I had an elderly lady that lost all her family, and I cared for her up until she was 95 at the forum. And I would even go over once a week and take her trash out for her because she didn't want the other residents to see her brokerage statements. But, and so I've had an empathy with working with elderly people. And the biggest thing that we did for her was we got home caregivers to stay with her. And then at the end, we had them 24 hours a day. Well, they became girlfriends to her. They provided her with a social life. A week before she died at 95, I was there. She was in her wheelchair and her favorite caregiver was there. And they were talking about after I left, they were going to go down and watch the pool boy clean out the pool at the forum. And this lady, she has a handicapped great-great-grandson, our nephew, that she was very fond of. And I've never seen the lady laugh until her great niece brought over the baby and she fell in love with the baby. In fact, she set up a $750,000 trust fund just for the child, the only great nephew I ever knew that got a trust fund set up. And we have the resources and we have the empathy with it here. And that's why we started this group. Like you said, Greg, it's a great resource. And we have, well, how many members do we have, Laura?
Close to 65.
Yeah, and a lot of them have dropped out now because of the COVID. A lot of the home caregivers are overwhelmed, understaffed, and don't have time for it, and they have dropped out, but they'll be back. I know the people.
We've also had a few people that have, changed positions or changed jobs, but we add, as we get we get new members, then we, filter them to these different.
Yeah, this is a fluid group, but we don't restrict it to, we even have bankers that have attended because they deal with elderly people. They help them roll over their CDs and help them invest their money in bank accounts. And it's good to be aware of senior abuse. And Greg, as brokers, we have to take up senior abuse and money laundering classes every year to look out for our seniors. And we have certain standards that we have to, my company even came up with a new form that I have to fill out if I'm going to advise seniors. to make sure that I'm checking all the boxes and aware of what their special needs are. But, and I think a group like this is very powerful in that you do have resources. And the biggest thing is you get to know people, you make friends with the people, and you recognize them and you hold them accountable for taking care of your seniors. If you know somebody and you can go back to them and say, look, you know, you're not doing a good job. You have to look out for your own people. And that's the lesson that I've learned in this is you've got to look out for the clients first, no matter who you hurt or whose toes you step on, you still have to do the right thing for your clients. And we're all in that. And I believe that everybody in this group feels that way. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic about this. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. Laura, do you have any other announcements?
No, well, just I want to thank Kent for taking the time to speak to us today. It doesn't matter how I have sat in almost every senior synergy meeting since its inception, and I learned something new every time I listen in. And I just want to say thank you very, very much, Greg. I want to say thank you for sending me his information so that we could have him speak. And we hope you'll come back and maybe even look at joining our chamber. We would love to have you. I do want to remind everybody that we're having our drive-by treats, no tricks next Wednesday, the 28th. If you would like to swing by and pick up a free box lunch, just let me know, and we'll have a little treat bag for you. And if you have any kind of an informational pamphlet, logo item, or discount coupon you might want to put in our treat bags, it's just a way for us to help you drive business to your front door. So again, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much for participating. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks on the next call.
Thank you all.
Very much.
Thank you.
Kent.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
And thank you for speaking, and you're welcome to come back.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And
All right.
our chamber is also very active. So
Yeah. Hey, Laura, sorry, Jim, were you finished?
Hold on. Let me stop the recording.
Oh.
Hold on.